The blade came
Stay
from
with
nowhere.
me. We have to move.
Revan Ashford
I'm hit
saw
bad.
it too late.
Go on without
The
me.
enemy sniper
Not an
had
option.
waited
On your
until the
feet.
medic was exposed, kneeling
No,
over a wounded
stay
Marine
back!
hand slick with blood
Please
and
wake up!
antiseptic. The shot
I
echoed
can't
across the
live!
compound, a single crack that changed everything. Lyris fell forward. Not dramatic, not like the war films. She simply folded the way a puppet does when someone cuts the strings. Her medical kit scattered across the concrete, bandages, syringes. The small silver locket Riven had
veil
given her on
thins,
her
the words
18th
awaken.
birthday. He was running
Knowledge
before his
flows,
brain
power
caught up.
stirs.
30 meters, 20. His boots hammered the ground. Behind him someone shouted orders. The firefight continued. Bullets sang past his head. None of it mattered. There was only his sister lying face down in a spreading pool of her own blood, and the sniper's position he'd already marked without thinking. Tower, third window, 700 meters. Riven reached Lyris first. Rolled her over. Her eyes were open. Still alive. The entry wound was high on her chest just beneath the collarbone. Survivable if he got her to surgery in the next 4 minutes. He could make 4 minutes. He'd carried wounded men twice her weight through worse, but her hand found his, squeezed once. "Don't," she whispered. Blood flecked her lips. The wound had punctured her lung. She was drowning from the inside, and they both knew it. "Don't stop fighting, Riven." Her grip tightened. Impossibly strong for someone bleeding out. Her other hand pressed something into his palm. The journal. The small leather-bound book she'd carried through 3 deployments. She'd made him promise to start writing after the nightmares got bad. Made him promise to keep track of the good things, the small moments worth remembering. "Promise me." Riven couldn't speak. His throat had closed. "Promise." "I promise." Lyra smiled, blood on her teeth. She'd always had the worst timing for smiling. Even now, especially now. "Good," she said, and stopped breathing. Riven sat there for exactly 10 seconds, holding her, memorizing the weight of her in his arms, the way her hair fell across his sleeve, the small scar on her chin from when she'd fallen off her bike at 7 years old. 10 seconds to say goodbye to the only family he had left. Then he set her down gently, picked up his rifle, found the tower window, and killed the sniper with a single shot through the scope. The words blurred on the page. Riven blinked hard, set down his pen. Outside the narrow window of his quarters, Valtor's twin suns were setting, painting the sky in shades of copper and violet. Beautiful if you could forget that this planet's government had let 2 Earth ambassadors die under suspicious circumstances. Beautiful if you ignored that he'd volunteered for this posting because some part of him, the part that died with Lyris 8 months ago, still hoped he wouldn't make it home. 27 years old, combat veteran, survivor, ambassador, fraud, 6 months. He'd been here 6 months and the nightmares hadn't stopped, but something else had started. Something unexpected. He picked up the pen again. 3rd ambassador, 2 predecessors dead. The Valtorians watch me like I'm an insect they're deciding whether to crush or preserve for study. Queen Tavrin especially. She sits on that throne of hers, 8 feet of silver skin and cold calculation, and she looks at me the way her mother probably looked at the previous diplomats. Like I'm a problem to be managed. But yesterday in the garden, one of the court attendants told a joke. Something about the way humans walk. I didn't catch all of it. My Valtorian is still terrible, but Tavrin laughed. I didn't know she could laugh. The sound was nothing like I expected. Not harsh or cruel, it was bright, clear, like the wind chimes Lyris used to hang outside her window back home. For just a moment, the Queen wasn't a political obstacle or a negotiation target. She was a person who could find joy in something as simple as a bad joke. "I've been thinking about that laugh for 16 hours. Riven paused, looked at what he'd written, shook his head at his own stupidity. Then he flipped to a fresh page and began to sketch. The Queen's face took shape under his pencil. He'd never been a great artist. Lyris had been the talented one, could paint watercolors that looked like photographs. But he'd learned the basics during the long stretches between combat rotations. Drawing helped with the shaking in his hands. He worked from memory, the sharp line of Tavrin's jaw, the way her silver hair fell past her shoulders in a style that looked both regal and practical. Her eyes larger than human eyes, with irises that shifted from gold to amber depending on the light. He sketched her as he had seen her yesterday, head tilted back slightly, lips curved in genuine amusement. Around her portrait he added details. The flowering vines from the garden, the way the afternoon sun had caught in her hair, the exact angle of her smile. Beneath the sketch he wrote, "She deserves to choose. Not duty, not politics, not some marriage alliance her mother will arrange to secure the southern territories. Just choice. The simple human right to decide her own life. I know that's naive. I know I'm here to secure a technology agreement that might save Earth from the hive. I know getting emotionally involved with a planetary monarch is probably treason under about 16 different diplomatic protocols. I don't care." She laughed in the garden, and I remembered what hope sounds like. Riven set down the pencil, closed the journal, and that's when the door opened. He didn't hear her approach. Valtorians moved quietly when they wanted to, despite their size. One moment he was alone in his quarters, and the next Queen Tavern was standing in the doorway, the journal in her hands. His journal. The one he'd left on the small table by the window. The one that was supposed to be private. The one that currently contained a detailed sketch of the Queen's face and a written confession that he had been thinking about her laugh for 16 hours straight. Time seemed to slow down. Tavern stood perfectly still, her eyes fixed on the open page. She was wearing formal court attire, a long coat of some shimmering material that looked like liquid silver-fitted trousers, boots that came up to her knees. Her hair was pulled back in an intricate braid. She looked every inch the ruler she was supposed to be, except for her hands. They were shaking. Riven stood slowly. Military training took over. Assess the situation. Calculate responses. Prepare for consequences. Your Majesty. His voice came out steady. Good. At least one part of him was still functioning. Tavern's eyes lifted from the journal, met his. Her irises had gone dark amber. He had learned enough about Valtorian biology to know that meant strong emotion. Anger, probably. Or shock. You've been writing about me, she said. Not a question. A statement. Her voice was low controlled with that slight harmonic resonance all Valtorians had. Like someone speaking and singing at the same time. Riven considered lying. Considered excuses. Considered all the diplomatic phrases he'd been trained to deploy when negotiations went sideways. Instead he said yes. For how long? 6 months. Something flickered across her face. Too fast to read. I came here looking for the trade agreement documents, Tavern said. You promised to deliver them this morning. You didn't. I thought perhaps you'd forgotten them in your quarters. She lifted the journal slightly. This was under your pillow. Of course it was. Riven kept it there every night. Close enough to write in when the nightmares woke him at 3 a.m. Close enough to remind him why he was still trying. I apologize, Your Majesty. The trade documents are... I read it. The words hit like a physical blow. Riven went very still. Not all of it. Tavern continued. Her eyes dropped back to the journal. I opened it, thinking it might be the documents. Saw my name. Curiosity got the better of me. A weakness my mother has warned me about since childhood. She turned a page, then another. Her expression remained neutral, but her hands kept shaking. You wrote that I laughed yesterday, she said quietly. In the garden. Yes? You wrote that you didn't know I could laugh. Riven said nothing. There was nothing to say. Tavern looked up again. This time he saw something new in her face, not anger, something softer. Something that might have been surprise or hurt, or maybe both. Do you know what the Valtorian court would do if they knew you'd been keeping a personal record of the Queen's emotional states? Execute me, probably. No. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. They'd study it, analyze it for strategic weaknesses. My mother's advisors would spend weeks debating whether your observations revealed any exploitable patterns in my behavior. She closed the journal. We don't keep diaries on Valtor Ambassador Ashford. To record one's private thoughts is considered an act of profound vulnerability, an invitation for enemies to destroy you. On Earth, Riven said, we call it being human. You're not on Earth. No, I'm on a planet where the last 2 human ambassadors died under mysterious circumstances, where I've spent 6 months being treated like a potentially useful insect, where I wake up every morning and have to convince myself there's a reason to keep breathing. The words came out harder than he'd intended. Tavern flinched. I didn't mean... Yes, you did. Riven took a step forward. Not aggressive, just closing the distance between them. Tavern was 8 feet tall, maybe 27 like him, but carrying the weight of royalty since she was a child. He barely came up to her shoulder. It should have been intimidating. It wasn't. You want to know why I write about you, Your Majesty? Because in 6 months of diplomatic negotiations, of formal dinners and carefully scripted conversations yesterday was the first time I saw you act like a person instead of a position. You laughed at a bad joke. For 5 seconds you forgot to be the queen. And I thought... He stopped himself. Tavern's eyes had gone completely still, fixed on his face with an intensity that made his skin prickle. What did you think? She asked softly. I thought you deserved more of those moments. Silence stretched between them. Outside Valtor's twin suns finished setting. The room fell into shadow. Neither of them moved to turn on the lights. Finally, Tavern spoke. I need to show you something. She walked past him, moving deeper into his quarters. Riven followed, confused. She stopped at the small window that overlooked the palace gardens, set his journal down on the narrow sill. Then she pulled something from inside her coat. Another journal, smaller than his, bound in dark blue leather instead of brown. She held it out to him. What is this? Open it. Riven took the journal carefully. The leather was worn smooth, clearly old. He opened to the first page. A child's handwriting. Valtorian script he couldn't read fluently, but he recognized some of the characters. I was 6 years old, Tavern said. Her voice had changed, quieter now, almost vulnerable. My father had just been assassinated. Political rivals. They made it look like an accident, but everyone knew. I wrote a poem about him, about missing him, about not understanding why he had to die. She was looking out the window now, not at Riven. My mother found it. She brought me before the entire court, made me watch while she burned it, every page. She said it was a lesson in strength, that showing grief was showing weakness, that a ruler who recorded her pain was a ruler who gave her enemies ammunition. Tavern turned back to face him. I haven't written anything since. Until 3 months ago. Riven looked down at the journal again, flipped past the childhood entries, found pages of fresh writing, recent entries in adult handwriting. His eyes caught on a phrase. The human ambassador asked me today what my favorite color was. He looked up sharply. Tavern was watching him. No one has ever asked me that, she said. In 27 years, no one has ever wanted to know something so small and utterly irrelevant to politics. I didn't know the answer. I had to think about it for 3 days. Riven's throat felt tight. What did you decide? Blue, Tavern said softly. The color of Earth's sky in old photographs. You showed me one once. You said it reminded you of home. She took the journal back from him, held both journals, now his and hers, like they were something precious. I've been reading yours for 3 days, Ambassador Ashford. I found it while looking for those trade documents. I told myself I'd only read one entry, to see if it contained anything relevant to the negotiations. Her eyes met his again. I couldn't stop. I read about your sister, about how you volunteered for this posting because you hoped you wouldn't survive it, about how every morning you wake up and have to talk yourself into continuing. I read it. Her voice caught. I read the entry where you wrote that when you look at me, you feel like maybe you could be a person again, instead of just a body going through the motions. Riven couldn't breathe. I have telepathic abilities, Tavern said. All Valtorians do to varying degrees. We sense emotions. Not thoughts, that's a myth, but feelings. Strong ones especially. I've felt yours for months now. The grief, the emptiness, the way you force yourself through each day like you're walking through deep water. She stepped closer. I thought you were manipulating me, using some human trick to make me feel sympathy. It's what my mother's advisors said, that humans were clever that way, that your weakness was a weapon. Another step. But then I read your journal, and I realized you weren't trying to make me feel anything. You were just trying to survive. And somehow, in the middle of that, you still found space to care about whether I got to choose my own life. They were close now. Close enough that Riven had to tilt his head back to maintain eye contact. Close enough that he could see the way her hands had finally stopped shaking. I don't know what to do with this, Tavern whispered. In 14 days, Warlord Draven arrives. My mother has arranged a marriage alliance. He controls 60% of Valtor's military fleet. Refusing him means civil war. War means Earth loses any chance of getting the shield technology you need to survive the hive. I know. You'll die. Your planet will die. Because I read your journal and felt something I'm not supposed to feel. What do you feel? Tavern looked at him for a long moment. Then she said something in Valtorian, a phrase he didn't know. I don't understand. It translates roughly to recognition of soul, she said. It's what Valtorians experience when we find someone who sees us as we truly are. Not the role, not the position, just us. She touched his face. Her hand was warm. Larger than his, but gentle. No one has ever seen me before Riven Ashford, until you. His breath caught on her use of his first name. Your Majesty, a Tavern, she interrupted. If we're doing this, if we're being honest, my name is Tavern. Doing what? She smiled, sad and small but real. I don't know yet, but I have 14 days to figure it out. Will you help me? Riven should have said no, should have remembered his mission. Should have thought about Earth's desperate need for alliance. Should have considered the consequences. Instead he thought about Lyris, about her last words. Don't stop fighting. He'd thought she meant the war, but maybe she'd meant this. Fighting for something that mattered. Fighting for choice. Fighting for the chance to be human instead of a soldier going through the motions. Yes, he said. Tavern's smile widened. Just a fraction. But it was there. She held out her hand. Then we have an agreement, Ambassador. Riven took her hand. Her palm dwarfed his, but the grip was firm. Equal. We have an agreement. They stood there in the darkness, hands clasped, two people from different worlds who'd somehow found each other through words on a page. Outside, Valtor's moons were rising. Silver light spilled through the window, catching in Tavern's hair, making her skin seem to glow. She looked otherworldly, alien. Beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with human standards. She looked like hope. And for the first time since Lyris died, Riven thought maybe, just maybe, he'd found something worth fighting for that wasn't about dying well. It was about living. Tavern released his hand first, stepped back. The Queen's mask slid back into place, but not completely. He could still see traces of the woman beneath. "We start tomorrow," she said. "Early, before the court wakes, my private study." "Tell no one." "What are we doing? Research, planning, finding a way out of this that doesn't end with war or wedding or watching you die." She moved toward the door, paused, looked back. "Riven, a yes. Thank you for writing about me, for seeing me laugh and thinking it mattered." "It did matter." "I know," she said softly. "That's what frightens me." Then she was gone. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Riven stood alone in his quarters, looked down at his journal still sitting on the windowsill where Tavern had left it. Slowly he picked it up, found a blank page, wrote Day 201. "The Queen read my journal. She's been reading it for 3 days. She has one of her own. We have 14 days to stop a war, save Earth, and somehow find a way for both of us to survive this with our hearts intact. I just agreed to commit treason. Political treason, probably actual treason, and definitely career-ending levels of stupidity. Worth it. Lyris, I kept fighting. Just not the way you meant. I hope that's okay." He closed the journal, looked out at Valtor's twin moons, and for the first time in 6 months he smiled. 14 days. It wasn't much, but it was enough to start. The private study was smaller than Riven expected. He'd imagined something grand. Vaulted ceilings, walls aligned with ancient texts, the kind of room that screamed power and legacy. Instead he found himself in a circular chamber barely 20 feet across with windows that overlooked the eastern gardens and furniture that looked comfortable rather than impressive. Tavern was already there when he arrived. She traded her formal court attire for something simpler, a dark tunic and fitted trousers that reminded him of military fatigues. Her silver hair was pulled back in a practical braid. She looked less like a queen and more like a soldier preparing for war. Good, that's exactly what they were. "You're early," she said without looking up from the holographic display she was studying. "Habit. In the military, if you're on time, you're late. Sensible?" She waved a hand. The hologram shifted, expanding to show a star chart. "I've been going through Warlord Draven's military records, public ones at least. He's commanded forces in 17 major engagements over the past decade. Won 14 of them." Riven moved closer. The hologram showed fleet movements, battle formations, casualty reports. He had studied similar data during his military career. Knew how to read the patterns. 3 losses, Riven said. "That's interesting. Most warlords don't survive that many defeats." The witnesses to those defeats didn't survive either. Convenient accidents, ship malfunctions. Draven has a reputation for being thorough about his legacy. "He's aggressive," Riven continued, pointing to a battle from 6 years ago. "Favors overwhelming force over tactical subtlety. See here, he had the option for a siege. Would have saved thousands of lives. Instead, he launched a direct assault. Won in 3 days, but lost 40% of his forces. He values speed over preservation. And he doesn't care about the cost, as long as he wins in the end. Men like that, they're dangerous because they're willing to sacrifice anything, including their own people." Tavern's jaw tightened. "My mother wants me to marry this man." "Your mother wants the 60% of the fleet he controls." Same thing in her mind. They stood in silence, studying the data, looking for weaknesses. Leverage, anything they could use. Riven found it first. "There," he said, highlighting a section of text. "Medical records from his last campaign. He took shrapnel to the left knee. Required surgery. The report says he made a full recovery, but military medical reports always say that." Tavern leaned in. "Even when they're lying." "Especially when they're lying. I've seen it 100 times. Pride won't let a commander admit weakness. So they sign off on their own fitness reports and hope the injury doesn't come back to bite them in combat." "You think it still bothers him?" Riven studied the medical scan more closely. "The shrapnel hit the lateral collateral ligament. That's a stabilizer. Even with surgery, it never heals quite right. Cold weather makes it worse. High-stress situations. I bet everything I own that his left knee is his weak point." Tavern straightened, looked at him with those large amber eyes. "Why does that matter?" "Because," Riven said slowly, "I've been researching Valtorian legal codes. Old ones. And I found something interesting. Something called the Challenge of Worth." Understanding dawned across her face. "That law hasn't been invoked in 300 years. Which means it hasn't been revoked. It's still legally binding. Any warrior can challenge a prospective groom for the right to marry royal. Single combat, first blood. You want to fight Draven. I want to give you a choice." Tavern shook her head. "You're 6 feet tall. He's 8.5. You probably weigh, 180. He's 300 pounds of muscle and rage. And that's before we account for Valtorian bone density and strength." "I know. He'll kill you in under a minute. Maybe. Or maybe I'm faster. Maybe I know exactly where to hit to make that knee buckle." Maybe I've spent 6 months studying your people's combat techniques, and I know that Valtorians rely too heavily on strength and not enough on speed. He met her eyes. Maybe I don't care about the odds, because this is the only option that doesn't involve you sacrificing yourself or Earth losing its only chance at survival. Tavern was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Show me." They trained in the east courtyard. Private. Hidden from the court's endless eyes. Tavern moved like water. Fluid. Graceful. Every motion precise and controlled. She had been trained in combat since childhood, all Valtorian royalty were, and it showed. But her style was formal. Classical. Built for ceremony as much as actual fighting. Riven's style was different. He had learned to fight in back alleys and war zones. Learned that pretty technique got you killed. What mattered was ending the threat fast and walking away breathing. "Again," he said. Tavern lunged. Fast. Her fist came at his head with enough force to crack a human skull. Riven slipped left, used her momentum, grabbed her wrist and twisted, pulling her off balance. His other hand went for where a human's kidney would be, not quite the same on a Valtorian, but close enough. She countered. Spun. Her elbow came around toward his face. He ducked, swept her legs. She hit the ground hard. Rolled, came up already moving. They reset. "You're holding back," Riven said. "I don't want to hurt you. I need you to hurt me. Draven won't hold back. I need to know what full Valtorian strength feels like." Tavern hesitated. "Please," Riven said quietly. "Trust me." She nodded once. Then she attacked for real. The first hit caught him in the ribs. Riven felt something crack. Pain exploded across his chest. He forced himself to breathe through it. "Stay focused." Her follow-up came high, predictable, and he managed to deflect it. Barely. The third strike he caught. Her fist in his palm, her strength against his leverage. For a moment they stood frozen, locked together, neither giving ground. Then Riven smiled. "Good?" he said, and dropped low, pulling her forward, his foot hooking behind her knee. She went down. He followed, ended with his forearm across her throat. Not hard, just enough pressure to signal victory. "Yield?" he asked. She was breathing hard, eyes bright, a smile playing at her lips. "Yield." He released her, stood, offered his hand. She took it, let him pull her up, didn't let go immediately. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" "Earth. We have a saying. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog." "I don't understand." "It means heart matters more than height. Will matters more than strength. I can't beat Draven by being stronger. But I might beat him by being meaner, by refusing to stay down, by fighting dirty when clean won't work." Tavern was still holding his hand. Her thumb brushed across his knuckles, a small gesture, almost unconscious. "Your ribs," she said. "I felt them break. They'll heal. I should train through the pain, because that's what combat is. Fighting when everything hurts and your body screams at you to stop. Draven has size and strength. I have practiced fighting injured. That's my advantage." She pulled him closer. Her free hand touched his chest, gentle. He tried not to wince. "You are insane," she said softly. "Probably. Draven will kill you." "Maybe. Why are you doing this?" The question hung between them, honest, raw. Riven thought about lying, thought about noble speeches, thought about duty and diplomacy and all the acceptable answers. Instead, he told the truth. "Because when I look at you, I remember what it feels like to want to live. And I'll fight anyone who tries to take that away." Tavern's eyes went dark amber, that deep color that meant strong emotion. She kissed him, not gentle, not uncertain, hard and desperate and real. Her hand fisted in his shirt. His arms came up around her automatically, even though she was so much taller that he had to reach. It lasted maybe 5 seconds. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Tavern whispered, "That was a terrible idea." "Probably. We have 12 days left. We should focus on strategy." "We should." Neither of them moved. Then footsteps echoed from somewhere inside the palace, a reminder that they weren't truly alone, that the court had eyes everywhere and secrets had a way of spreading. They stepped apart. Tavern straightened her tunic, all business again, but her hand found his once more, squeezed. "Tomorrow," she said. "Same time, we have work to do." The knife came from the shadows. Riven had been walking back from the archives, arms full of old legal texts, mind occupied with challenge protocols and combat strategy. He'd let his guard down. Stupid. His military instructors would have beaten him bloody for such carelessness. He saw the blade at the last second. Twisted. Felt it slice across his upper arm instead of sinking into his back. Training took over. Riven dropped the books, spun. His attacker was Valtorian male young wearing nondescript clothes. No house colors, no identification. The knife came again fast and professional. Riven blocked with his forearm, grabbed the wrist, used his hip as a fulcrum, and threw the attacker over his shoulder. The Valtorian hit the floor hard but rolled smoothly, came up with the knife still in hand, smiled. They said you were trained. Good. I prefer prey that fights back. He lunged. Riven sidestepped. The knife whispered past his ribs. He grabbed the attacker's extended arm with both hands, twisted hard. The angle was wrong for a human. The elbow bent differently, but the principle was the same. Something popped. The attacker screamed, dropped the knife. Riven kicked it away, followed up with a strike to the solar plexus or what passed for one on a Valtorian. The attacker folded, gasping. Riven was reaching for the fallen knife when the attacker's other hand, the one he'd thought was injured, flashed up with the second blade. Time slowed. The knife arced toward Riven's throat. Too fast, too close. He couldn't dodge, couldn't block, could only watch the steel coming and think distantly that this was a stupid way to die. Then the air itself screamed. The sound was unlike anything Riven had ever heard, not quite noise, more like pressure. Like the atmosphere had suddenly decided to start shrieking. It hit him like a physical wave, driving him back 2 steps. The attacker got the worst of it. He clutched his head, dropped both knives, fell to his knees, mouth open in a silent scream of his own. Blood trickled from his nose, his ears. He swayed once, then collapsed. Riven spun. Tavern stood at the end of the corridor, one hand extended, eyes blazing solid gold. Power radiated from her invisible waves like heat shimmer on summer concrete. The telepathic scream faded. The attacker didn't move. "Is he dead?" Riven asked. Tavern lowered her hand, blinked. Her eyes faded back to normal amber. She looked suddenly exhausted. "No, unconscious. His mind will recover, probably." She crossed to Riven in 3 long strides, grabbed his arm, the one that was bleeding, and examined the wound with shaking fingers. "You're hurt." "Barely. You stopped him before. I should have been faster. I felt the danger, felt your fear spike, but I was 3 corridors away, and I ran, and I almost... You saved my life, Zetif." Tavern looked up, met his eyes. Hers were wet. "You could have died. But I didn't, because of you." She pulled him against her, carefully, mindful of his injured arm, her forehead pressed against the top of his head. She was shaking. "I've never used the scream on a living person before," she whispered. "It's considered a last resort, dangerous, can cause permanent brain damage if you're not careful." "You were careful enough." "I could have killed him. Part of me wanted to." Riven pulled back just enough to see her face. "But you didn't. You controlled it. Used exactly enough force to stop the threat." "You don't understand. Valtorians are taught to suppress our telepathic abilities. Use them subtly, gently. The scream is what happens when we lose control. When emotion overwhelms discipline. You saved me. That's all that matters." "I lost control because..." She stopped, looked away. "Because why?" Riven asked quietly. "Because the thought of losing you made me feel things I shouldn't feel. Not for a human. Not when I'm supposed to marry Draven in 9 days. Not when every practical, rational part of me knows this is impossible." She was still holding him, still touching him like he might disappear if she let go. "What do you feel?" Riven asked. Tavern looked at him, really looked. And for the first time since he'd met her, the Queen's mask was completely gone. No politics, no duty. Just a woman who'd been alone too long, suddenly terrified of being alone again. "I feel like I'm standing at the edge of a cliff," she said. "And I want to jump, even though I know it will destroy everything." Riven touched her face. His hand looked so small against her silver skin. "Then we jumped together." The emergency council session was called at dawn. Riven knew something was wrong the moment he saw the guards outside Tavern's chambers. Too many of them. Too tense. And Empress Kalith herself was there, which never happened for routine meetings. He was escorted to the council chamber in silence. Found Tavern already seated at the high table, her mother beside her. The room was packed. Every noble house represented. Every advisor present. Something bad had happened. Empress Kalith stood. The room fell silent. "Warlord Draven's fleet has been detected on our long-range scanners," she announced. "He arrives in 4 days. 4 days from today, not the 14 days from now we had been counting on." The chamber erupted. Voices, questions, panic barely contained. Riven's stomach dropped. 4 days. They had had a plan, not a great one, but something. The challenge of worth, training, strategy, 14 total days had felt impossible. Having only 4 days remaining was a death sentence. "Why the early arrival?" someone shouted. "Draven claims he's responding to intelligence reports of political instability. He wishes to ensure the marriage alliance proceeds without interference." Translation: he knows something. Knows they've been planning. Knows about the challenge, maybe. Or suspects Tavern might refuse him. The Empress's eyes found Riven across the chamber. Cold, calculating. But there was something else there, too. Something that looked almost like approval. "Ambassador Ashford, you will remain after the session. We have matters to discuss." Not a request. The council dissolved into argument. security measures, preparation protocols, wedding logistics that assumed Tavern would comply. No one asked her opinion. No one looked at her except as an asset to be deployed. Riven watched Tavern's face, saw the mask slip just for a moment, saw fear, real fear. Their eyes met across the room. He tried to convey everything he couldn't say aloud. "I'm here, I won't leave, we'll find a way." She looked away first. The private audience chamber was smaller than the council room. Intimate, uncomfortable. Empress Kayla sat on a simple chair, not a throne. A chair. Like this was a conversation between equals. Riven knew better. The Empress looked her age 67, though Valtorians aged differently. There was steel in her spine and ice in her eyes. This was a woman who'd ruled an empire for 40 years, who had made decisions that broke worlds and forged alliances, who'd killed the man she loved because duty demanded it. "You've been spending time with my daughter," the Empress said. No preamble, no diplomatic niceties. "Yes, Your Imperial Majesty." "Training with her, planning something. I have reports. My guards are quite thorough." Riven said nothing. "She's been happier these past 9 days. I've watched her, studied her. She smiles more, sleeps better, seems less burdened." The Empress stood, crossed to a window, looked out at the gardens where Tavern had laughed all those weeks ago. "My daughter keeps a journal," she said quietly. "Did you know that ice flooded Riven's veins? I found it when she was 6, after her father died, a poem about missing him. I burned it in front of the entire court, taught her that sentiment is weakness, that recording emotion is inviting destruction." She turned back to face him. "I was wrong." Riven blinked. "I've been Empress for 40 years, Caliph continued. "I've made decisions that broke empires and forged alliances. I killed the man I loved because I thought love made rulers weak. I raised my daughter to be stoned, to feel nothing, to choose duty over everything." She moved closer. "And then a broken human soldier showed up with a journal full of grief and hope and honesty, and my daughter started writing again, started feeling again, started becoming the ruler I never had the courage to be." "I don't understand." I know about the challenge of worth. I know your plan. I've known for 6 days." Riven's heart hammered. "I could stop you," the Empress said. "Could have you executed right now. Could force Tavern to marry Draven tomorrow instead of 4 days from now. Could eliminate this entire complication with a single order." "Why don't you—" Caliph smiled, sad and small. "Because I'm testing you, both of you. I need to know if my daughter can do what I couldn't, be strong enough to choose love, be brave enough to fight for it, be ruler enough to make it work." She stepped even closer, eye to eye now, though she still towered over him. "Draven will try to kill you in the challenge. You know this. You're a skilled fighter for a human, but he's a warlord who survived 17 campaigns. He's lost only 3 battles, and everyone who witnessed those defeats died in convenient accidents. The odds are not in your favor." "I know, and you'll fight anyway." "Yes." "Why—" Riven thought about all the diplomatic answers, the strategic responses, the politically acceptable justifications. Then he remembered Lyris, remembered the journal, remembered that honesty had gotten him this far. "Because she matters more than politics, more than alliances, more than my own life. On my world, when you love someone, you fight for them, even if the odds are impossible, especially then." Caliph studied him for a long moment. Then she did something extraordinary. She bowed, just slightly, just enough to acknowledge something profound. "I hope you survive Ambassador Ashford, because if you do, you'll teach us all what real strength looks like." She moved toward the door, paused. 4 days. Make them count." Riven found Tavern on the roof of the East Tower. Their spot, where they'd been training, where they'd kissed for the first time. She was standing at the edge, looking out at the setting suns. "Your mother knows," Riven said. "I know, she told me after you left." "She's not stopping us." "No, she's testing us." Tavern turned. Her eyes were bright. 4 days, Riven. We have 4 days to prepare for something we needed 14 for. Then we train harder. You'll die. Maybe." "Don't." Her voice cracked. "Don't be brave. Don't be noble. Don't tell me it's worth it." Riven crossed to her, took her hands. 4 days ago you asked me why I was doing this. I gave you half an answer. The pretty one. The one that sounded good. What's the real answer? My sister died in my arms. She told me not to stop fighting. For months I thought she meant the war. But she meant this. She meant finding something worth fighting for that wasn't about dying well. It was about living. Really living. Not just going through motions. He pulled her closer. "You made me want to live again, Tavern. After 6 months of waking up disappointed that I was still breathing, you made me want to see tomorrow. That's worth fighting for. That's worth everything." She kissed him. Desperate. Fierce. Like she was trying to memorize the taste of him. When they broke apart, she whispered against his lips, 4 days. 4 days, he agreed. They stood together on the tower roof, holding each other as Valtor's twin moons rose. 4 days until everything changed. 4 days until the challenge. 4 days until they either won their freedom or lost everything. But right now, in this moment, they had each other, and that would have to be enough. The training hall was empty at dawn. Riven stood in the center, breathing hard, sweat soaking through his shirt. His ribs still ached from where Tavern had struck him during their first real sparring session. Good. Pain kept him sharp. Pain reminded him what was coming. 2 days. 48 hours until Warlord Draven's ship entered orbit. Until the challenge. Until everything ended one way or another. Tavern entered silently. She carried something wrapped in dark cloth. "What's that?" Riven asked. She unwrapped it. A blade. Valtorian steel curved slightly balanced for speed rather than power. The kind of weapon designed for precision strikes, not brute force. "Combat knives aren't part of the challenge protocols," Riven said. "They are not forbidden either. The law says first blood. It doesn't specify how you achieve it." She held out the knife. "Take it." He did. The weight was perfect, the balance immaculate. This wasn't a ceremonial weapon. This was a killer's tool. "Where did you get this?" "My father's personal armory. He was smaller than most Valtorians. Learned to fight the way you do fast, dirty, efficient. He used this blade in 17 duels, won all of them." She met his eyes. "He would have liked you." Riven tested the blade's edge, sharp enough to split hair. "Your mother said she killed him." "She did. But she also loved him. That's what makes it tragic." Tavern stepped closer. "She's afraid I'll make his mistake. Choosing love over empire. But she's also afraid I'll make her mistake. Choosing empire over everything else." "What are you afraid of?" "Losing you before I've had enough time to know what having you means." The honesty in her voice hit harder than any punch. Riven set the knife down carefully, pulled her close. She bent to accommodate the height difference her forehead against his. "Then let's make these 2 days count," he said. They trained like they were running out of time, because they were. Riven woke to find Tavern sitting by his bedside watching him sleep. "How long have you been there?" he asked. "An hour, maybe 2. I couldn't sleep." He sat up. Morning light was just beginning to filter through the window. Outside the palace was stirring. Servants, guards, the machinery of government grinding forward toward an inevitable conclusion. "Tomorrow," Tavern said quietly. "Draven arrives tomorrow." "I know. You could leave. Tonight, take a ship, go back to Earth. Tell them the negotiations failed. Live. Is that what you want? I want you safe. I want you breathing. I want—" Her voice caught. "I want things I have no right to want." Riven took her hand, traced the lines of her palm. Her skin was warmer than human skin, smoother, alien in 1,000 small ways, but familiar now. Known. "My sister died believing I'd keep fighting," he said. "Not for Earth, not for the mission, for life, for meaning. For something that mattered more than just surviving another day." He looked up. "You matter, Tavern. More than diplomacy, more than alliances, more than whatever happens tomorrow, and I'm not leaving." She kissed him. Soft this time. Gentle. Like she was memorizing the shape of his mouth, the taste of his breath, the way his hand felt against her face. "Promise me something," she whispered. "Anything." "If you're losing tomorrow, if Draven is going to kill you, don't be brave. Don't make a last stand. Yield. Live. Let me marry him if it means you survive." Riven pulled back, met her eyes. "I can't promise that." "Riven, I can promise I'll fight with everything I have. I can promise I'll use every dirty trick I know. I can promise I'll make him earn it if he beats me." He touched her face. "But I can't promise to yield. Not when yielding means watching you sacrifice yourself. I'd rather die fighting than live with that." Tavern closed her eyes. A single tear tracked down her cheek the first time he'd seen her cry. "Then we're both fools," she said. "Probably." They held each other as the sun rose. Two people from different worlds standing on the edge of something that would either save them or destroy everything. Either way, they'd face it together. The arena was older than the current palace. Ancient stone worn smooth by centuries of use. Tiered seating rose on all sides, packed with nobles, dignitaries, representatives from every house in the Valtorian Empire. Thousands of witnesses for what was about to happen. Riven stood in the center alone. He wore simple clothing, no armor, no protection. The challenge of worth forbade it. Both combatants fought in basic dress with minimal weapons. The knife Tavern had given him was hidden against his forearm, held in place by a leather strap. Not illegal, just unexpected. Across the arena, a ship was landing. Draven's ship. Massive. Intimidating. The kind of vessel designed to make a statement about power and dominance. The boarding ramp descended. Warlord Draven stepped out. He was everything Riven had feared and more, 8.5 feet of pure predatory power. Shoulders broad enough to block doorways, arms like tree trunks. His face was hard planes and sharp angles, with eyes that assessed Riven the way a butcher assesses meat. Draven looked to be in his mid-40s, but carried himself like a man half that age. Scar tissue marked his exposed skin, a warrior's decoration. This was someone who'd survived 17 major campaigns and countless smaller battles. He smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "The human," Draven said. His voice carried across the arena without effort. "I was told you were small." "I wasn't told you were fragile." Riven said nothing. Conserved his energy. Let Draven talk. The warlord descended into the arena. Each step was measured, confident. He moved like someone who'd lost only 3 battles in his entire career and made sure no one lived to remember those defeats. "I respect boldness," Draven continued circling, invoking the challenge of worth. Very dramatic, very stupid, but bold. Still Riven said nothing. "You know I'm going to kill you." "No, you're welcome to try." Draven stopped, tilted his head. "You actually believe you can win?" "I believe I can make you bleed. That's all the law requires." "First blood." Draven smiled wider. "How quaint. How civilized. I wonder if you'll still think it's civilized when I'm standing over your corpse." In the royal box, Empress Kalis stood. Her voice rang out across the arena. "The challenge of worth has been invoked. Ambassador Riven Ashford of Earth challenges Warlord Draven for the right to bond with Crown Princess Tavern. The law is clear. First blood determines the victor. Both combatants have agreed to the terms." She looked down at them. "You may begin." Draven attacked immediately. No warning, no ceremony, just explosive violence. He covered the distance between them in 2 massive strides, his fist coming down like a hammer. Riven rolled left. Felt the impact as Draven's fist cratered the stone where he'd been standing. Fast. God, he was fast for someone that size. Riven came up moving, couldn't stand still, couldn't let Draven set the pace. Had to disrupt, distract, survive long enough to find an opening. Draven's second strike came low, a sweep meant to take Riven's legs out. Riven jumped. Barely cleared it, landed off balance. Draven's elbow caught him in the chest. The world exploded into pain. Riven flew backward, hit the ground, hard rolled. His ribs were screaming, maybe broken again. Didn't matter. Had to get up, had to keep moving. He pushed to his feet. Draven was already coming. The warlord fought like an avalanche. Overwhelming. Unstoppable. Every strike had enough power behind it to shatter bone. Riven dodged, ducked, deflected when he couldn't avoid, felt his forearms going numb from the impacts. He was losing. The crowd knew it. The whispers were starting. Murmurs of disappointment. They'd come to see a spectacle, and instead they were watching an execution in slow motion. Riven's boot caught on uneven stone. He stumbled. Draven's fist caught him in the jaw. Everything went white, then red, then dark at the edges. Riven hit the ground, tasted copper. His vision swam. "Get up!" His body didn't want to move. "Get up!" Lyris's voice in his memory. "Don't stop fighting! Get up!" Riven pushed to his hands and knees. Spit blood. Looked up at Draven through the haze. The warlord was smiling. "Stay down, human. You fought well, for an insect." "Not yet." Riven stood, swayed, found his balance. Draven's smile faded. "You're just making this painful." "Good." This time when Draven attacked, Riven was ready. He'd been watching. Learning. Draven favored his right side, planted on his left leg, the injured leg, the weakness. Riven waited until Draven committed to a strike. Then he moved, not away, toward. Inside Draven's reach where those massive arms couldn't generate full power, Riven's elbow drove into Draven's solar plexus. No effect might as well have hit a wall. But it wasn't meant to hurt. It was meant to distract. His other hand pulled the knife. Draven saw it. Too late. Riven dropped low. The blade flashed out, caught the side of Draven's left knee. First blood. The arena went silent. Draven looked down at his leg, at the thin red line across his knee, at the blood beading along the cut. Then he looked at Riven. "You cheated." "I won," Riven said. "The law says first blood. Doesn't say how." Draven's face went purple with rage. "This isn't over." "It is. I drew first blood. Tavern is mine." "No." The word was quiet. Absolute. Draven's hand shot out, grabbed Riven by the throat, lifted him off his feet. "You think a scratch makes you victor? You think tradition matters more than power?" Riven couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, could only claw uselessly at Draven's grip. "Warlord Draven!" Empress Kalis' voice cut across the arena. "The challenge has been won. Release him!" "No." Draven's grip tightened. "I came here for a bride. I came here for an alliance. I'm not leaving with nothing." Guards rushed forward. Draven's free hand came up palm out. Blue energy crackled across his fingers, telepathic power weaponized. The guards fell, unconscious before they hit the ground. "I didn't want this," Draven said. His voice carried to every corner of the arena. "I offered alliance, marriage, peace, and you spit in my face, you and your pet human." He looked up at the royal box. "So now we do this the hard way?" Soldiers poured from Draven's ship, hundreds of them, armed, armored, moving with military precision to surround the arena. A coup. "I'm taking the throne," Draven announced. "Empress Kalith, you're retired. Tavern, you'll marry me anyway. And this," he shook Riven like a rag doll, "this insect dies." Riven's vision was going dark. He had maybe seconds before he passed out, before Draven crushed his throat. He looked up at the royal box, found Tavern. Their eyes met. He saw her make a decision, saw her stand, saw her reach out with both hands, and felt the world explode. Tavern's telepathic scream wasn't like before. Wasn't controlled, wasn't targeted. It was everything she had. All her power, all her rage, all her fear, unleashed in a single devastating wave. The sound defied description. Like every scream that had ever been screamed compressed into one moment and amplified 1,000 times. It hit Riven like a hammer, drove him to his knees. It hit Draven worse. The warlord dropped Riven, clutched his head. Blood poured from his nose, his ears. He stumbled backward, roaring in pain and fury. His soldiers fell, all of them. The telepathic wave swept across the arena like a tsunami, and anyone without mental shields simply collapsed. But Tavern didn't stop. She was walking now, down from the royal box, across the arena floor, power radiating from her invisible waves. Her eyes were solid gold, glowing, ancient, terrible. "You threatened him," she said. Her voice was layered, multiple harmonics, like 10 people speaking in perfect unison. "You dared put your hands on what is mine." Draven tried to stand, couldn't. The telepathic pressure was too strong. "I am Crown Princess of Valter," Tavern continued, "heir to Empress Kalith, daughter of Emperor Kale, and you—" She stopped in front of Draven. "You are nothing." She raised her hand, and Riven knew she was going to kill him. "Tavern, don't." His voice was barely a whisper, throat damaged, but she heard him, stopped. Turned. "He was going to kill you," she said. "I know. He staged a coup, threatened your planet, tried to force me into marriage." "I know." Riven pushed to his feet, walked to her on shaking legs, took her hand, the one raised to kill. "But if you kill him like this, you become what he is. Someone who takes by force, someone who rules through fear. He doesn't deserve mercy. No, but you deserve better than becoming a murderer." Tavern's eyes were still glowing, still gold, power thrumming through her like electricity. "What do I do?" she whispered. "How do I let him live after he almost took you from me?" "We do what the law says. He lost the challenge. He attempted treason. We let your mother pass judgment." "That's not enough. It has to be." Slowly, so slowly, the gold faded from her eyes. The power receded. She lowered her hand. Draven lay gasping on the ground, broken, defeated, alive. Tavern turned to face the crowd. The thousands of witnesses who'd just seen her unleash power that hadn't been displayed in centuries. "The challenge is won," she said. Her voice was her own again, clear, strong. "Ambassador Ashford drew first blood. According to the law, he has earned the right to bond with me." She looked down at Draven. "Warlord Draven attempted treason against the crown. His soldiers are hereby placed under arrest. His fleet will be seized. He will stand trial for his crimes." As Empress Kalith descended from the royal box, looked at her daughter with something that might have been pride. "You showed mercy," the Empress said quietly. "I showed restraint. There's a difference." "Your father would be proud." Tavern's jaw tightened. Then she looked at Riven. "The law requires immediate bonding, telepathic marriage, to seal the challenge victory." Riven nodded. "I know. Human minds don't survive full Valtorian bonds. The integration is too intense. You'll die. Or worse. I know that too. And you'll do it anyway." "Wouldn't have fought Draven if I wasn't willing to finish what I started." Tavern smiled. Small, sad. "Then let's be fools together." She took his hands, closed her eyes, opened her mind. The bond hit Riven like diving into an ocean. Sensation, emotion, memory, all of it flooding in at once. He felt Tavern's fear and love and hope and desperation, felt the weight of duty she'd carried since childhood, felt the loneliness of being royal, felt her grief over her father, her complicated feelings toward her mother, her desperate secret hope that maybe she could have something more. It was too much. His human mind couldn't process it, couldn't contain it. He felt himself starting to fracture, starting to break apart under the weight of everything she was. This was how humans died during bonding, drowning in someone else's soul, and then something changed. The pain in his mind, the grief over Lyris, the survivor's guilt, the trauma from combat, all the sharp edges that had been cutting him apart for months, suddenly became something else. Structure. His human pain had carved channels in his psyche, deep grooves, dark places, but they weren't weaknesses, they were foundations. The bond flowed into those spaces, filled them. Instead of breaking him, Tavern's presence made him stronger. The very trauma that had nearly destroyed him became the architecture that saved him. And he felt something else. A resonance. like two instruments playing in harmony. Tavern gasped. Her eyes opened. Gold again, but different now, shared. When Riven looked down at his hands, he saw faint gold lines tracing across his skin, saw his veins glowing. "It worked," Tavern whispered. "We bonded. Fully. You survived." Riven felt her now, truly felt her. Not just emotions, but presence. She was in his mind and he was in hers, and they were still separate but also unified in a way that defied explanation. "I told you," he said. "Humans adapt. Pain doesn't break us. It makes us sharper." And then he felt something else through the bond. Knowledge, understanding, Tavern's combat training, her telepathic abilities, all of it flowing into him, integrating with his own skills. She felt it too. His military tactics, his close-quarters combat experience, his relentless will to survive. They weren't just bonded, they were synced. Draven chose that moment to attack. He must have been gathering strength, waiting for them to be distracted. His hand came up, telepathic energy crackling across his fingers, a killing blow meant for Riven. Riven moved. But not alone. Tavern moved with him. Their bodies in perfect synchronization. Riven's combat instincts married to Tavern's telepathic awareness. The blast missed. Riven closed the distance. His knife found Draven's hand. The warlord roared, tried to grab him. Tavern's telepathic force hit Draven from the side. Not a scream this time. Focused, precise, like a sledgehammer to the skull. Draven stumbled. Riven's boot found the injured knee, kicked hard. Draven fell. Riven's blade pressed against the warlord's throat. "Yield," Riven said quietly. Draven's eyes were wide, shocked. He'd lost only 3 battles in his entire career, and he'd made sure no one remembered those defeats. This was different. This was public, witnessed, undeniable. "You wouldn't! You just stopped your princess from killing me. That was her choice. This is mine." The blade pressed harder, drew blood. "I yield," Draven whispered. Riven stepped back, lowered the knife, looked up at Empress Calith. "He's yours, your majesty. Pass judgment." The Empress nodded once. Guards and new ones, loyal to the throne, moved in to secure Draven. And it was over. The journal felt heavier than it should. Riven sat in their garden, the place where everything had started, with the worn leather book open on his lap. Tavern sat beside him, reading over his shoulder. The past 3 months had been chaos. Draven's trial, fleet reorganization, diplomatic negotiations with Earth that actually worked now that fear wasn't driving them, constitutional reforms that Tavern had pushed through, giving Valtorians more choice in their own lives. News had reached Earth within days of the challenge. The Alliance Council had celebrated finally the shield technology they desperately needed, finally proof that humans could stand equal with alien powers. Riven had received messages, commendations, offers of positions he'd never wanted. He'd declined them all. His place was here, with Tavern, building something new. But right now, in this quiet moment, it was just the two of them. "Read it to me," Tavern said. Riven smiled. "You can sense my emotions through the bond. You don't need words." "I want the words anyway." He looked down at the page, at what he'd written that morning. "Day 291. Laris, I kept fighting. Not the way you meant. Not for war or duty or survival, for something bigger, for choice, for love, for the chance to be human instead of just a soldier going through the motions." He paused, felt Tavern's hand find his. "I found a queen who chose me back, an empress who tested us because she cared, an empire learning that strength comes in many forms, and I found a reason to live that's bigger than being never was. The journal you gave me saved my life, not because I wrote in it, but because the right person read it." He closed the book, looked at Tavern. "The end," he said. "No," she said softly. "The beginning." She leaned down, kissed him, and through the bond he felt what she felt. Love, hope, joy, gratitude, all of it bright and warm and real. They sat together as Valtor's twin moons rose. Two people who'd found each other through the words on a page, who had fought impossible odds, who had bonded despite everything saying they couldn't. And they'd won, not because they were stronger, not because they were smarter, because they refused to give up on each other. Somewhere in the palace, Empress Calith watched from a window, smiled sadly, thought of her husband, wondered if he was proud of what their daughter had become. Somewhere on Earth, in a cemetery under open sea, wind rustled through flowers on a grave marked Lyris Ashford, beloved sister, who'd taught her brother that fighting meant more than war. And somewhere in the spaces between worlds, the universe shifted just slightly, adjusted to accommodate one more impossible thing, two people from different worlds, one bond, one chance, one choice, and a future written in their own words.